Guys, welcome to Talk Fan Podcast. I'm Kaima Tigney, and on today's episode of Talk Fan Podcast, we have Nicollette Sullivan. Nicollette has been surrounded by music her entire life. Both her parents are singers. Her dad was a lead singer in a hard rock band, and her mom sang backup for various bands. Exposed to hard rock and metal from dad, and soul R&B, classical, and funk from mom, Nicollette had a diverse musical experience growing up. Meanwhile, with her mom and grandmother, she was steeped in classic black and white films and period pieces. It was watching these films that led to Nicolette's discovery of some of the artists that influenced her musical development, such as Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, and Simone. Through musicals and singing tour while in school, Nicollette began developing her voice by pursuing singing professionally after high school. It was then that the writing for her sophomore album and continued to grow and evolve as an artist. Welcome to the podcast, Nicolette. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, of course, with your parents, they are both singers, and you kind of grew up doing things with them, with music and everything. But, like, how has your parents kind of influenced, like your work with their musical backgrounds?
So both of my parents were always involved in music in some way or another. I mean, my mother kind of transitioned out of it later on, but my father always kind of stayed with it. They were both, well, my dad, he like wrote a lot himself, so I was around him and we traveled with his band. I traveled with his band. And so I would grow up in the studio with him, and I would watch him like writing music. And my mother influenced me a lot aesthetically and with my taste in music as well. So just being around both of them, as my parents, it rubbed off on me.
Like how often would you like travel with your dad's parents? I mean, your dad.
Um, we, I mean, it was a lot more when I was like very young, right? So like I was like a baby and then like very, very young that I have very few memories, but like I do remember being surrounded by music and then just always from there singing. And then as I got into school, I would like be involved in all the music programs and was always kind of interested in it for as long as I can remember because I was always around it as a child.
I know with like a lot of people, like when their parents are like in a band or they're a singer or whatever, their kids are most likely to do the same things. Of course, when they're growing up, they are in that zone where they're kind of influenced by what their parents are doing. And when they're in that songwriting, musician type of world, when they grew up going to these things, they are most likely to do the exact same thing. So doing that literally all the time, traveling, studios, whatever it was, that it really influenced it. It really goes out to generations of kids if their parents are like that, because it really makes a difference when going to all of these things that their parents are playing.
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely I mean, it's a glamorous pursuit, right? So
Hmm.
of course I couldn't help but be you know, mesmerized and want to pursue the same thing. And
I honestly
it's
would too.
yes, and I think, as I grow, I think that like it's become more than just the glamour of it.
Hmm.
Now it feeds the soul. And I think that it always kind of fed the soul, but I didn't realize it wasn't always like that was not always at the forefront of my pursuit in music.
Yeah, because of course with growing up with parents musicians, you always think like you always have to do what they're doing to get a career in music. But there's so much that really goes into it more than having doing everything your parents are doing. Like you can go to different careers, whatever, but being a musician or a songwriter or being in entertainment itself, it can be so difficult going into that craft and really in general.
Yes, it can. It's very it takes a lot of bravery as well because you're putting yourself out there and being so vulnerable. I know like with my a lot of my lyrics are very personal. And they reflect like my personal experiences at the time that I'm writing. And it feel like I'm, reading my journal to the public. And then to put my creativity out there to be, criticized by the public is also something I'm still adjusting to. Because when I create, I do it more for myself, and not so much thinking about how it will be received.
That is honestly something that a lot of people deal with, especially in entertainment, is that like when they're releasing something, there's always gonna be nerves and hate to everything. Like even if I post an episode or something, I'm always nervous as heck to post something because of the hate. And it takes time to get like adjusted to that. Like it takes not everyone's over it. There's ways to deal with it, but it's not gonna like stop you mentally to like stop what you're doing, even though it might take a lot, because it really can be so exhausting to do what you do every single day.
Exactly. But I feel like pushing through that has definitely made me stronger as a person. And it makes me freer,
Mhm.
once you put yourself out there and you realize it's not that big of a deal, then you can just continue to feel and pursue without, being free of judgment. And that's a beautiful thing as well.
So, exactly. With having a musical parents, like where did you kind of discover your own musical interests outside your parents' genres for creativity? So, like, how did you kind of discover like your musical genres that you do now?
Okay, so I, would explore outside of my parents through like programs in my schools and stuff like that. Even like outside of my school, I would perform in like outside, extracurricular type programs where they were like performing arts based. And then after, like in terms of my genre, a lot of that came from, well, originally I would watch a lot of vintage films with my grandmother and my mother. My mother always had like an interest in like, vintage aesthetics, right? And she was like the original thrift queen, or I don't know, whatever you want to say, right? Like she was the original. She always like showed me, and she was definitely the person who showed me my taste in vintage.
Mm,
Anyways, that segued into me watching like vintage movies, and I would listen to the soundtracks. And I always gravitated towards those aesthetics. And then as I got older, and I was listening to the kind of musical landscape that was out, um, at the time that I started to think about pursuing music seriously, I was thinking that I heard a lot of the same thing, and I wanted to kind of differentiate myself in some way. And I noticed even with like the music I started listening to, because I didn't want to be the same as everyone else. I wanted to listen to different music, So I thought that jazz was kind of undervalued.
mm,
And I started to really like dive into it more and more. And I found a love of it. And then when I started to, consider pursuing music seriously, it was like kind of a natural instinct for me to go in that direction because I was already listening to that type of music. Plus, I wanted to not do the typical style of music that I was hearing at the time. So it all kind of came together naturally. And then my sound, I think, has evolved a little bit since I just started. But I think that there's always kind of roots. I think timeless is a good word. I think my
mm.
my music always kind of sounds a little bit timeless.
That is a great word for it. Like, I like that you love all those vintage and jazz type of things. Honestly, I like those too. Jazz really like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like uncommon to listen to it because not as popular as it was maybe when our parents were growing up. Because a lot of teenagers these days are listening to like maybe pop, country, rock, not maybe not rock and roll these days, but or rap. That's what I'm looking for. That those are really what teens are listening to. But it really is such an underrated type of thing. But with Randy's music and having a lot of artists who make jazz music or, vintage type of stuff, it will get more popular. But really with those vintage movies, I absolutely love. Like love watching all those like kind of old timers type of things, which is very weird. But with growing up with those type of things, it really does impact you in a way that you want to bring it more awareness because of course that sort of thing is not popular like when it was maybe like 40 years ago. Because of course our generations are much different from years ago, so we like different things. But it's crazy
Exactly.
really to see how much things have changed since when our parents were growing up compared to now, especially in music.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and I've always also just been such a romantic soul,
Mm.
at heart. So I think jazz really lends itself to the romantic in me. Um, I love to romanticize everything.
I'm the same
I don't
way.
know.
Like even if it's nothing, I always romanticize about anything or anything. It's really I can see something that's romanticized about it. It's like I'm just literally a hopeless romantic. Like I'm not gonna be afraid to say it, but it's true.
Me
But who
too.
isn't though? Who isn't hopeless romantic at this point? But you just came out with a new song called Love Didn't Live Here Anymore. Like how did you come up with the idea of this song?
So actually, I that was it was a song that was written by a friend of mine's father. Um, he is just a brilliant writer, and he had reached out to me. He had heard a few of my songs and reached out to me and, asked if I wanted to do the song. And he had sent me a couple, and that one really stood out to me. And it I write some of my songs, but some like I wrote most of my songs, I should say. But a couple of times I will, if somebody pitches me a song and I think it's great, I will definitely, write it. It always has to feel like I always like kind of tend to listen to music that I can relate to at the time.
Oh yeah.
Um, I feel like it's very much the same with my music. So at the time I chose that, I felt personally I could relate to the song. It was where I felt I was in a similar place.
Like I know with a lot of people, they tend to write or publish songs that really mean to them at that point in their life. Like with most songs, they mean personally for relationships, family, mental health, or whatever it is. That's what is the best part about songwriting is that you can write about whatever you want and no one's gonna hate you for it.
Exactly. No, exactly. Exactly.
Like how does this like single different from like your previous releases of your music?
I think that it shows a little bit more bravery in the delivery. I think that you can see the growth in my development as an artist. And I think that it is more vulnerable in ways as well.
Because of course with every single songwriter, they tend to really different from different songs they make. Some might be similar, some might be different, but every song is different from the next. Like with Taylor Swift, where she started off as a country singer, now she's a pop singer. Like every song that you release is always different from the last thing they published maybe a month or two before.
Right. No, that's true.
Is there like a specific like memory or experience that kind of influenced these lyrics of don't live here anymore? I know you said that you someone wrote it, but do you have any kind of lyrics or anything that kind of stuck out to you the most?
Um, I mean, I feel like the entire song was completely relatable. Um, and we all deal with relationship
Mm.
ups and downs, right? So like I definitely have experienced those downs, and I felt like it was apropos for the time that I was um, you know, considering singing it and making it my own as well.
Love it. So, the last thing I have for you for today is how can people connect with you and listen to the music, your music?
So you can find all of my social media sites, as well as my music on my website, NicoletteSullivan.com, and then Nicollette Sullivan on Instagram. And it would be, yeah, you'll find everything on the website. So that's the easiest.
Ooh, awesome. I will make sure to put her website below for you guys to check out whenever you get a chance. I totally recommend. I really hope you guys enjoyed listening. I know there's a tons of episodes coming out recently, which I'm super excited, but there's so more much to come this next couple of months or in the summer. But thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate you and all you guys taking the time to listen to this episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and review. That will mean the world. But thank you so much, Nicolette, for joining us today. And I really appreciate all the feedback and everything, and talk about all the music, all the amazing music that you ran and released.
Oh, thank you so much. No, thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much. And